I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Unlocked and into the dark. Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever home. Oh, what a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner. Is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner. Is it in her?
Okay, I just have to say it once. Let's go, Brandon.
Is this real? Just illusion? I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion.
You know I couldn't go all weekend and not do it.
I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
Rippin' Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Rippin' Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
Coming to you from a secret cave, hidden deep within the wilderness, this is the Darkwolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
Hello, my fellow patriots and freedomists around the world. I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and we are broadcasting live from a secret cave hidden deep within the wilderness of Tennessee. That's right. We're ripping through the electromagnetic soup. We're tearing through the atmosphere, and we're tunneling away into your radio like a quantum particle. This is the Darkwolf's Den Radio Show Freedom Flame series for Thursday, March the 17th, 2022. Happy St. Patrick's Day, by the way, folks. So whether you are on the edge of a reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Folks, tonight we are going to dive deep down the rabbit hole of the birth of the Republican Party. That's right. I hope everybody enjoyed our United We Stand event recap. This is going to be another event recap of a talk given earlier today in Ripon, Wisconsin. And we're going to dive down deep into this subject here in just a moment, but first, let's go ahead and see who all we have out here in our chat rooms, both on the DarkWolf's Den Show as well as the Ripon Rabbit Hole YouTube channels. How we doing out here tonight, folks? And I see quite a few of you guys here. It's always so wonderful to spend time with you guys. I see Raider Champion over there. I don't know if I got the first person in the room. My live chat may have cut off at one person. If so, I do apologize. It has not been the luckiest St. Patrick's Day for me, folks, but it has been fun. I'll tell you that much. My Life DIY says happy St. Patrick's Day. I do wish, once again, a happy St. Patrick's Day to each and every one of you guys out there. Errol Taylor says greetings all. Glad to see you, Errol. Gene Hochschalter. Great to see you here. Rippin' Rabbit, of course, Mr. AJ himself hanging out. Sandy B, glad to see you. Flippin' Rob, as well as Maggie's Aces, dropping the clovers across the board. Love it. I could use all the luck I can get tonight, let me tell you, folks. Once again, it has been fun. Prairie Fire, great to see you, my friend. He says, evening, all evening, Prairie. Glad to have you along for the ride on this uber important Freedom Flame weekend, folks. I really get excited when I get to do these episodes. Excuse me, and especially in this very, very special weekend. If you do not know, if you are new and joining us, we will be celebrating the Freedom Flame on March 20th, coming up this Sunday. Make sure you set your calendars and make sure you are there with a candle and bells and whistles, I would like to think, as we celebrate the freedoms that we have in this wonderfully amazing country, with the Freedom Flame itself absolutely stands for. AJ over in the Darkwolf's Den Show chat. Glad to see you, AJ. Not to be confused with AJ. Euler Greg, glad to see you, my friend. Sandy B hopping over into the DWD, as well as My Life DIY. So glad to see every last one of you guys. And I mentioned a moment ago that what we are going over tonight is a talk given by an emeritus professor. We'll introduce him here in just a little while, but we need to get a little backstory. We'll build to that here in just a bit, folks. And it's a long, deep rabbit hole, a lot to go through, a lot of fun, a lot of stuff coming your way, and we're going to get through it together. And whether you're listening on YouTube or around the world on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, or even on the replay on BitChute or Rumble, we're glad to have every last one of you guys along for the ride. That's right. And before we do dive into the fun that was this evening's event, we have two more fun little segments to do, the first of which we call Today in History. On this day in 432 AD, St. Patrick, at about 16 years old, is captured by Irish pirates at his home in Great Britain and taken as a slave to Ireland. This is the traditional date given. Once again, that happened on this day in 432 AD, and that is today's segment of Today
Say what?
Our quote of the day today, folks, comes from an old Latin proverb, but it's one that we've heard a lot, at least recently, and that is this, and I quote, "Fortune favors the brave and the bold," end quote. And that is today's segment of
Say what?
Wise Words to Live By Indeed. Would you not agree, my freedom-loving? And of course, freedom is what the Freedom Flame series is all about. However, we are here tonight to specifically discuss the birth of the Republican Party, an incredibly intriguing story, to say the least. The Republican Party traces its roots back to 1850, when anti-slavery leaders, including former members of Democrats, Whigs, and Free Soiler parties, as well as some Marxists, joined forces to oppose the extension of slavery into Kansas and Nebraska by the proposed Kansas-Nebraska Act. Very interesting name. At meetings in Ripon, Wisconsin and Jackson, Michigan, they recommended forming a new party, which was duly established at the political convention in Jackson. However, we are getting ahead of ourselves. In order to fully understand what all the parties that came together actually stood for, we need to take a little bit of a side dive into each party, starting with the Whigs.
George Washington once warned against the passionate loyalty to political parties. He said that they would only divide the country. Well, he was right. But throughout American history, there have been many political parties. One such political party was the Whig Party.
Those are the ones that wore those strange white wigs, right?
And let's just get this out of the way. No, nearly every member of the Whig Party did not wear wigs.
That's not what I was taught when I was in school.
Here is the story of the rise and the fall of the Whig Party.
Once upon a time, there was a president named Andrew Jackson who really shook things up after he took office.
To say that Jackson was controversial is an understatement.
He expanded the power of the executive branch by doing things like destroying the Second National Bank of the United States, sending troops to South Carolina during the nullification crisis, and vetoing nearly every bill that came across his desk. A group of Americans became more and more afraid of Jackson. They labeled him King Andrew and called him a dangerous man on horseback. One of these critics of Jackson was a well-respected senator from Kentucky named Henry Clay. He decided Jackson's opponents needed to organize against Jackson, and in 1831 he started planning a new political party. Clay and other political opponents of Jackson called themselves Whigs, named after the term many patriots referred to themselves during the American Revolution, which showed that they hated King George III. The Patriots actually stole the term from the British Whig political party, which originated because of its anti-king stance.
So to the people of the day, Jackson looked like somebody that was trying to be a king opposed to a president, kind of like somebody else I think we're all familiar with.
The Whigs generally shared many beliefs. They all tended to like Henry Clay's American system, an economic plan that had three main ideas. 1. Have a high tariff to protect and promote industry in the United States. 2. Have a national bank to encourage trade and loan money to businesses. 3. Federal handouts for roads, canals, and other big internal improvements to help farming and to help the country grow and help the country stay connected. The Whig Party also supported the supremacy of Congress over the president and a more modern, market-oriented economy. Many Whigs would be kind of considered liberal by today's standards. They had radical ideas like arguing that all children had to attend school to teach moral values, and some even argued for the prohibition of alcohol. Many were anti-slavery and against Indian removal.
So as we see, the Whig Party held a number of values that the Republican Party still holds to this day. We also have another group of members that were in the Little White Schoolhouse, and those were Free Soilers.
Fun fact, when you Google how many political parties are there in the USA, Google tells you 2. But...
And isn't that sad that the only answer, well, the first answer you get from Google is only two, when that's not really the case, is it?
Yet again, Google is wrong. There are at least 39 other national political parties in the United States, and people don't know this because the United States has a two-party system, and the Republican and Democratic parties do dominate.
I actually went through one night in the backstage with a group of us friends. Hi, Tyrone Jackson, glad to see you. With a group of us friends back there, us rabbits in the backstage, and we looked up the different political parties, and some of them are kind of funny. Some of them are a little scary by my standards. I'll let you go through and do your own research on those. Some of them are pretty funny, though. There's a number of which I was really surprised to see even existed, honestly.
These other parties are called third parties. Many of them have wide-ranging platforms. However, some of them are what's known as single-issue parties, meaning they only are campaigning mostly for one major issue.
Well, that's simple enough.
Party. The Free Soil Party existed from 1848 to 1854, but it had a huge impact. And their major issue was to stop the expansion of slavery.
As we see, that seems to be a common theme amongst these different parties that have come together. And at that time, there was a revolution of parties sparking off. But once again, I'm getting way ahead of myself, folks. The person I would like to introduce next to complete our rest of our story this evening, and will be with us the rest of the episode, is Professor Emeritus at Ripon College, Mr. William Woolley, also known as Bill Woolley. Mr. Bill, welcome. We're glad to have you here. Tell us about the next party, sir, if you would, in the three party systems that were at the time of the Little White Schoolhouse in order.
You're leaving.
I do apologize. There is a little extra audio here and there. There was some extra audio issues in the actual recording at the time.
And finally, the most successful of all the third-party movements in this period was the American Party.
The American Party.
It was unusual in that it was organized along the lines of a secret society. Its members were instructed that if anyone asked about the party, the members were to claim that they knew nothing about it. As a result, the party gained the nickname of the Know-Nothings.
The Know-Nothings, folks. That sounds like a party I could back, the Know-Nothings. But it's funny because this grew out of what was supposed to be at the time a secret society, yet a political party. That's really an interesting thought to me. Kind of seemed like something I've heard before.
The party was formed in 1843 as a response to fears regarding immigration, and especially Catholic immigration, with Irish immigration targeted in particular.
I don't know any.
As you can guess, the party was anti-Catholic, and it was fueled by fears that Catholics were part of a massive secret plot headed by the Pope to overthrow Protestantism in America. The party was very strong in the early 1850s, when it appeared that it might be the one to emerge as the successor to the Whig Party. What is significant about all this is that anyone who was 30 years old in 1854 would have seen the rise of 7 different national political parties in just 26 years.
And if I could learn how to use a mic, could you imagine in that time we've seen in the last 20 years no political parties really. One, I take that back, the Tea Party we've seen formed. That was one political party we've seen formed in the last, at least in my lifetime. So I'm pretty sure most of yours, right? Could you imagine seeing 7 different political parties forming in your country just that quickly? that would be mind-boggling to me. We've seen changes in different political parties over my lifetime. I've seen different value structures change within the different political parties that tend to rule the scene, but creation of that many different parties in one's lifetime, that's just mind-boggling to me, right?
I'd now like to turn to Ripon. Settlers began arriving in Ripon in the early mid-19th century. They came from a variety of areas, ranging from Canada to Virginia. But what is of crucial importance is that the overwhelming number came from just one area, Western New York. This would make sense. If one lived in Western New York and wanted to settle in the new lands in the West, by far the fastest, cheapest, most comfortable, and most efficient way to do that would be to travel a day or two to a Great Lakes port, take a schooner or a steamboat to Lake Michigan, and within a rather comfortable week, disembark in Sheboygan, Kenosha, Racine, Green Bay, or even Milwaukee. There one could take a pack horse or two west on any one of several existing Indian trails, many of which would have led them to the Ripon area. What is important about this, however?
So these folks all were literally migrating at the time across the country and founding these new areas as America was just growing into the size that it is today.
Is that in the 1830s and 1840s and even 1850s, Western New York was by far the most intellectually turbulent area in the country. The major issues were religious, but this was not an evangelical movement. It was a radical and theological movement. People began questioning virtually everything about their Christian faith. No issue was sacred. And all this was happening everywhere in that part of the state. Historians, therefore, now refer to the area as the burned over district. They call it that not due to any fires, but due to the fact that the turbulence involved everyone. It involved every city, it involved every village, it involved every neighborhood, every household, every person, and it was intense everywhere. Hence the idea that the area was burned over. Moreover, the debates and the questioning of anything considered orthodox extended well beyond religion to virtually every other aspect of life.
So these folks were really tired of what was going on in their town. And we're going to fast forward the story a little bit, but ladies and gentlemen, before we do, it is time to go ahead and take a break right here. So my name's Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and you're listening to the Darkwolf's Den Radio Show exclusively on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the Ripon Rabbit Hole. We'll be right back with the second half of the Darkwolf's Den Show after these messages. Stick around. Don't touch that dial. That's right.
We gotta stoke the fires and run off the men in black. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Oh yeah, Jerry Hicks on a Thursday night. Hi everyone, it's AJ the Rippin' Rabbit. Are you enjoying your Freedom Flame weekend so far? I know I am. If you are and you haven't done so already, please make sure to jump on over to our website, ripinrabbithole.com. That's RIPONRABBITHOLE.com. There you can sign up for your exclusive backstage VIP pass. It's free to do so. It always will be. And it's going to give you unfiltered access down the rabbit hole to our privatized social media network where the conversation continues after the show. I'll return again tomorrow night to kick off the virtual Freedom Flame celebration as I'm joined virtually by a blast from the past. That's right, the founding father of the United States of America, an evening with Mr. Alexander Hamilton. We've come across new developments in time travel technology that's going to allow us to connect to the 1700s tomorrow night, Friday, March 18th. It starts at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, as all shows do. Come along as we journey down the time travel rabbit hole in an evening with Mr. Hamilton. Then Saturday night, we'll take a close look at Dwight D. Eisenhower. That's Saturday, March 19th. Again, starts at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, as all shows do. We'll journey down and explore the rabbit hole of the 34th President of the United States, Ike. And then, I can't think of a better way to end the weekend out right together with you than Sunday, March 20th, our 5th annual Freedom Flame broadcast live from Ripon, Wisconsin. Our virtual interactive broadcast honoring 168 years of the spark that lit the Freedom Flame. Now, this is an interactive broadcast, and it's going to happen a little earlier than normal broadcasts do. It's going to start at 4 p.m. Pacific. That's 6 p.m. Central and 7 p.m. Eastern. Make sure to mark your calendars and note that time change difference. Make sure also to have your candle along, ready to light with us when we send the virtual spark from around the world all the way to Ripon, Wisconsin, and rekindle the 2022 Freedom Flame. I'll have more details to share with you tomorrow as well, with our evening with Alexander Hamilton, kicking off the virtual side of the virtual celebration, a 24-hour event celebrating the Freedom Flame in virtual Ripon. More details coming tomorrow night. We'll return you back to Jerry Hicks and the DarkWolf's Den, covering the birth of the Republican Party for Thursday, March 17th. You're listening to the Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, home of the Freedom Flame, RiponRabbitHole.com.
If you were meant to be controlled, you would have come with a remote, but you didn't. And that's why you listen to the DarkWolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and welcome back to the second half of the DarkWolf's Den Radio Show for Thursday, March the 17th, 2022. So whether you're on the edge of a reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you, especially for this very special Freedom Flame episode as we finish kicking off the Freedom Flame weekend the right way. That's right, folks. And that's with you guys, of course. I wouldn't have it any other way as we celebrate freedom together, and it's great to see so many new faces in the house. I have been neglecting the chat just a bit. I do apologize as we've got a whole lot of information to go over tonight. This is an interesting story that only gets more interesting by the moment, I promise you that. Earth first, space later. Glad to see you here. Man, Danny Malls made it into the house, dropping a load of emojis back there a little bit ago. Good to see everybody here with us this evening. It's really, really great to celebrate holidays like this with you guys. And when we left our story, we had made it to Ripon, Wisconsin, and we've understood that these folks were going through a lot of stuff coming out of different states, pioneering the country and forming new political parties, new ideologies, new stances. But one thing they had in common was the moral moral stance against slavery, and this becomes more and more important as we continue our story, as it should, slavery being one of the worst things that ever happened in this country, at least in this author's opinion, or reporter's opinion. As we continue, we are going to pick up with a lady named Elizabeth Harris. Once again, the voice we are going to hear is Emeritus Professor at Ripon College, Dr. William Woolley.
Come from New York. She came from Canada. But she and her husband, Thomas, lived in Ripon in the early 1850s. They then moved to Chatfield, Minnesota, because Thomas felt he could make his fortune by running a sawmill in a town that was just being built. After a short time in Chatfield, Elizabeth wrote to her mother a letter, which contained 2 sentences that I feel characterized Ripon in the 1850s, even though they were about Chatfield. She said, "I don't like Chatfield very much. The people here don't go to meetings." What she was saying, of course, was that in Ripon, which she had just left, people did go to meetings. And these were not meetings of the garden club variety, deciding when to hold the spring sale. They were meetings that discussed highly important issues in theology or politics or whatever else.
Wouldn't it be wonderful to have those kind of meetings today, to actually sit and discuss, not scream and yell at each other, but discuss ideologies and theologies on an intellectual level opposed to I'm right, you're wrong level, in a way as to understand each other, not to win an argument that shouldn't even be occurring, because that's not discussion if you've already reached that point, right? Unfortunately, you don't see a lot of that today. You don't see a lot of real open adult discussion, mainly due to the lack of ability to do such on certain platforms that tend to...
So in 1854, Ripon was a place that was unusual.
Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate you taking the mic.
And the fact that people liked to go to meetings where issues of national and even cosmic significance were discussed, and they felt it important to do so. And it was also a place where some of the citizens did not feel it to be at all presumptuous to think that they could change the world all by themselves.
And I like that attitude. The people did not think it was out of the world to believe that they could make a difference. And if more people had that idea today, that we can make a difference if we try to come together under the banner of freedom, under the banner of Americanism, if we come together and just talk and discuss things, right?
That, of course, gets us to one particular meeting, from which came the effort to organize a new northern political party that would be called the Republican Party. This did not happen by accident.
Although, as we will find out, it almost didn't happen at all. Believe it or not, this becomes a miracle story in and of itself.
It was the result of determined leadership from one person named Alvin Beauvais. Beauvais, of course, came from Western New York. He was a teacher, but also active in the various movements in the burned over district. He was also connected with many of the political leaders in New York, and especially with Horace Greeley. Greeley was the editor of the New York Herald Tribune.
And we all know the persuasive power of a media, even especially at the time, as media was new. The things printed and shown to the people in mass print was a newer concept at the time, right?
Which was then the closest thing in America to a national newspaper. He was also highly influential to the point that in 1872, he was a major political party candidate for president of the United States. Beauvais moved to Ripon in 1850 to engage in real estate when he was 32, but he remained deeply interested in politics. After the election of 1852, he was convinced that the Whig Party was dead and traveled back to New York and met with Greeley. At the meeting, he explained that he felt the Whigs were history and that a new party should be created and that it should be called the Republican Party.
Now, this, of course, borrowing off the Jeffersonian Republicans that already did exist at the time. Interesting, fun fact about the Jeffersonian Republicans, they would go on to become what we today call the Democrat Party, believe it or not.
Greeley, he said, was enthusiastic about the idea, but then returned to Ripon to push his idea, and he pushed it for over a year, but without much success.
So as fired up as he was, he went back and for over a year tried to get support for this new party, and it just wasn't working out for him that way, unfortunately.
However, when word reached Ripon about the proposed Kansas-Nebraska Act, people were outraged, and Beauvais saw this as his chance. In late February, he and a few associates called for a meeting to protest the proposed act. The meeting was held in a church on March 1st and drew an enthusiastic crowd. However, Beauvais had planned how to turn the meeting to his advantage. After the people had expressed their anger and speeches were made, and when people were worked up, Beauvais presented the meeting with a set of resolutions that he had written out ahead of time and suggested that the meeting vote its endorsement of these resolutions. There were a large number of the resolutions, but they contained a lot of angry denunciations of the Kansas-Nebraska Act that was working its way through Congress.
So as we see revolutionary acts, and I say revolutionary to the point of these radical ideas at the time, we still see today the fact that we can stand up and get involved and do our part in our communities, as we are hearing in this amazing story here, and there's no telling who might get behind you and help support you in doing what you have to do to help out your community, right?
Beauvais also included a call for the formation of a, quote, Great Northern Party to oppose the extension of slavery into the territories. The resolutions were adopted unanimously and with great enthusiasm, giving Beauvais what he considered to be a mandate from his community to begin the formation of his desired party.
So at this point, he feels like he's got the go-ahead and the permission, the whole community behind him. A miracle story for sure. Could you imagine that today, somebody stepping up, a real America First, for instance, candidate stepping up and having just the entire community backing them? I mean, that could be any one of us, right? If you're doing what's right in moral stances, if you will, then it's amazing the people that will back you, and the story only gets better from here, folks.
This, of course, would have required a second meeting, which would have been an organizational meeting. One would have expected that, having gotten his mandate, Beauvais would have tried to strike when the iron was hot and have his second meeting as soon as possible. But apparently, he had trouble getting people to attend.
So even though he was able to get the community good and fired up at the time, when they went back to their normal lives, it was more important to rear the kids and raise the farm and just dealing with everyday life than to, for some of these folks, I'm sure, then to think that they really could do something. He just was having a problem keeping the support up. It's not like he didn't have the support. He was just having a problem keeping it going at the moment.
Over the weeks, he buttonholed a number of them, but for some reason, a week and several days went by and no organizational meeting. What this meant, of course, was that despite the angry sentiment in town, people for whom political allegiances were central to their sense of identity were still highly reluctant to drop their old political loyalties, especially for a project that would almost certainly go nowhere. Then an event occurred to which few have paid much attention.
An event that we've spoken, well, I say we, it will be we. Now, AJ has spoken about a number of times. I think he just spoke of this event last year, and it was one of those events that was really needed to sway the change in emotion and in the ideas of these folks. It's one of those last ditch moments, you know what I mean, when you've given up all hope and you think everything's just not going to work out and some funny thing happens that changes the way. Well, this is one of those, I guess you would say, time-locked events, right?
But it may have served to turn the situation around for Beauvais and Ripon. In 1852, a slave named Joshua Glover escaped from his owner in Missouri and got to Milwaukee, where he found security with a family named Glover. 2 years later, in 1854, his owner found out where he was and came to Milwaukee to get him back. According to the fugitive slave law that was part of the Compromise of 1850, he was not only allowed to do that, but he could also call on federal marshals for help. And what was far worse, those marshals could then deputize citizens to help them. I said earlier that the fugitive slave law was political dynamite. It was because suddenly in the North, slavery was no longer an abstract happening to someone else somewhere else. It was something real happening to real people in northern communities. On March 11th, the marshals raided.
And it's really funny that it's never a problem until it becomes a problem, right? And that's something that I see today, and we're seeing a big change in, is it's never something that bothers people until it becomes a local issue. And when it starts affecting your local life, your actual daily routine, that's when it becomes a problem for folks. And that's exactly what happened here. It started to hit home. These national issues had become a local issue.
Glover's home and captured him. Glover apparently put up a huge fight, so that when he was brought out of his home, he was badly bruised and bleeding. The crowds were there, and the sight of Glover bleeding and trussed up Canada. What was critical about this was that the people who rescued Glover were normal citizens who would otherwise never ever consider breaking the law.
And these folks, if you guys don't know, broke into a prison and extracted Mr. Glover after he had been imprisoned in the jails. And once again, this was an act of pure civil disobedience, but it was under the right moral grounds.
But the capture of Glover seemed so inhuman that along with everything else, these normally law-abiding citizens felt they could no longer put up with the existence of slavery, and it was now time to stop talking and start acting. And of course, all this was for days in newspapers all over the state. And I think this may have caused a change of attitude in Ripon, because within a few days, Beauvais suddenly had the people he wanted for his meeting.
It only took one incident to completely turn the folks around. And this brings us up to March 20th, 1854, when the people had had enough. The Democrats, the Whigs, the Free Soilers, everyone around the area had enough backing behind them, had had enough. And they decided enough was enough. And they come together, 50 men, 3 women, and a child, in the little white schoolhouse in Ripon, Wisconsin, ladies and gentlemen. And they came together under an issue, a main issue. But it wasn't the only issue. Slavery was just one of many. Women's suffrage was more or less born in this same movement. As one of the leaders for women's suffrage was there, the way I understand it, that night. And we have information, folks, that is actually very, very unknown. This is probably the only show that you're going to hear this information on, unless it is, take that back, there's one other. AJ the Rippin' Rabbit himself has a specific video with this information. We have the names of the 3 women that were there that night. As we always hear about all the gentlemen, Alan Beauvais, I can't remember the Mr. Chase, whose name I am escaped by just this moment. But we have the names of the men that were there and involved, but we now have the names of the women, folks, and as probably a radio first, I am going to read out those names. The first lady that attended this meeting was named Nancy R. Allen. Nancy Allen actually has a really, really important place in history, believe it or not. Her husband was related, and forgive me, I don't have the relation that it was, brother, cousin, whatever it may be, was related to a Civil War hero named Ethan Allen. Ethan Allen founded the state of Vermont. Really, really interesting fact of the day there. Another lady that was there was named Miss Bassett. And the last lady that was in the room was named Mrs. Chamberlain. And I thank AJ the Rippin' Rabbit for giving me this information. And the reason that they were there in the room that night is because they wanted to make sure that women's suffrage was a part of the Republican Party's platform. In my lifetime, I have seen the Republican Party grow into something absolutely amazing. But if there's one thing that we can all agree, regardless of which party we are, is the fact that these folks did not just go into the little white schoolhouse and come out as a brand new political party. They did more than that. They were able to set aside the ideologies, the politics, the beliefs, the hardcore yes or no questions, and they were able to come together under the banner of freedom. And that is what is most important. That is the one issue that they fought for in the very beginning, and in my opinion have continued to fight for to this day. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of the birth of the Republican Party. A story that almost wasn't so many times, and yet it was a miracle for sure. And that is no mistake. And in the end, folks, all you can do is appreciate what has come before us, learn what we may from those times, and only grow as a citizenry. Would you agree? In the end, folks, you be the judge. We got to close it out. That's right, that's it for this episode of the Darkwolf's Den Radio Show for Thursday, March the 17th, 2022. So whether you're on the edge of a reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Folks, the den may be closing, but don't you worry, the weekend fun has only just begun. That's right, especially on this very special Freedom Flame weekend. Make sure you tune in tomorrow, Friday, March 18th, 2022, 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 Central, as our buddy AJ the Rippin' Rabbit takes back to the airwaves with an all-new episode of the Rippin' Rabbit Hole live show. It turns out he has a way to reach into the past, and he has set up a conversation with the great Alexander Hamilton himself. That's right, folks. He will be joined by Alexander tomorrow night as they discuss the Constitution and I'm sure many, many other freedom-loving topics. All that and more on Friday, March 18th, 2022, 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 Central. Then on Saturday, March 19th, 2022. Again at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. AJ the Rippin' Rabbit returns to the airwaves with an episode about Eisenhower. That's right. If you don't know much about President Eisenhower, this is definitely the episode for you. I can tell you he's actually gained quite a following in the paranormal side of things, let alone the freedom-loving side of things. And he actually has a very deep connection to the freedom flame that we are celebrating this weekend. So make sure you tune in Saturday, March 19th, 2022, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central for that discussion on Eisenhower. And all of this leads up to the Freedom Flame episode coming up Sunday, March 20th, 2022. This one is going to be at a different time, folks. We're looking at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific on this particular episode. And do make sure that you have a candle ready. As you see, the Freedom Flame episode, we celebrate the Freedom Flame in Ripon, Wisconsin every year. This will be the 5th year of Ripon Common Sense Radio Network celebrating the Freedom Flame. This will be 68 years of its existence and 168 years since a variety of different types of people entered a little white schoolhouse in Ripon, Wisconsin and came out united under the banner of freedom. And this is going to be an amazing episode. I am so very excited for this coming Sunday. Once again, make sure you have a candle available, as we will all be lighting our very own freedom flames. And every year AJ asks people to take a picture and send it to him, and we add it to our Freedom Flame candle gallery. So do make sure you have that on hand for Sunday, March 20th, 2022, 4 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. I'll get these numbers right shortly, folks, I promise. Also, for any details of upcoming events that we may have going on, make sure you stay tuned to the RippinRabbitHole.com. That is the RippinRabbitHole.com. That is RippinRabbitHole.com. Over there, you're going to find, once again, any and all updates and details on events that we have coming up. Just make sure you click that on Listen Live button, and we will keep that up to date as much as possible. Also, you're going to find a variety of groups over there. Do make sure you check out the different groups that we have available. And if you don't see something you like, you can always make your own group. That's right. And invite your friends and everybody you would like to join that group, right? We also have the Darkwolf's Den Radio Show group, as well as the Rippin' Rabbit Hole Radio Show group over there, if you would like to drop topics of suggestions to us. Also, one of my favorite places to hang out is over on the RippinRabbitHole.com in the 24/7 Backstage Lounge, which is where we hold a lot of the RSVP special events. All you got to do is select the Backstage Lounge, choose your name, okay your cam if you would like, and your microphone, and join us. We would love to see every last one of you back there. Also, if you are going to go over to RippinRabbitHole.com, all you got to do to get access to all of this fun stuff is just sign up for the always free VIP pass. That is going to get you access to everything on that site. I look forward to seeing all of you guys down the rabbit hole. Of course, that is our social media section over there, where we do not shadow ban, we do not get rid of information. As a matter of fact, we welcome information down the rabbit hole. With that said, folks, we have to get out of here. It's been an amazing weekend kickoff, and I'm so glad to have spent it with every last one of you. On behalf of AJ the Rippin' Rabbit, Chick Mandela Effect, Michael Musco, Walt House, everyone involved in Rippin' Common Sense Radio Network, as well as our amazing mod team over on YouTube. My name's Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. And remember, until next we meet, stay awake, but dare to dream. Good night, everybody. How? Yeah, that's right.
I'm lost and into the dark. Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever home. Oh, what a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion? I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
Here's a thought, folks. What freedom is mean to you? What does freedom mean to you? The Freedom Flame series has got to be one of the most free, right? Good night, folks.